Hey, this is my crazy medical story of what's been happening this whole past year. This whole thing started back in December of 2024. I was just having a regular day of school, and then all of a sudden I began to feel super hot and feverish, so I went to my friend Emily, and she felt my head and told me that I was feeling pretty hot, so we went to the bathroom to try and cool me down. Pretty quickly, though, I began to not be able to stand. Emily took me back to lunch, where I ended up collapsing on the floor. I laid there in what seemed to be a seizure. My eyelids were fluttering and I was twitching, but I could still hear and remember the things that were going on around me. I didn't ever go unconscious. My friends got teachers and called an ambulance. I ended up being in that seizure for about 45 minutes. When I got to the hospital, I seemed almost completely normal, just very tired. The doctors told me that they were going to do some scans on me, and I was expecting maybe a brain scan or something, because it seemed to be a seizure. But no, they ended up doing chest scans, which I'm still very confused about, but all the results came back normal, and I seemed to be perfectly fine, so they just sent me home and told me to come back if anything happened again. I went on a few months not having any, so we just thought that it was a one and done thing. But in April 2025, I seemed to be having another one. I got super hot and once again went to my friend Emily, but this time we were at the YMCA and worst of all, in the women's dressing room. I was laying on this bench that was in front of a ton of lockers, and this old lady walked over to Emily and I was already in my seizure. And the lady explained to us that she needed to get into the locker that was directly behind Emily and I. Emily tried to explain the situation like, ma'am, she's having a seizure. We can't do anything. When the lady assured us that she worked at the front desk at a fire department and that she would know if I was okay. So she reached for my arm and checked my pulse, which Emily then very quickly pulled my arm away, and the lady seemed like mildly disappointed or like annoyed, but Emily just let her get into the locker and grab her things. We expected her to leave after that, but no. She took her things and walked about 5 feet away and began changing right in front of us. Like, oh, right there. It was horrible. The second time I had these seizures, it felt so surreal because initially in December, it was just some fluke, and it was a joke to add to my weird list of medical things that have happened to me. But now that I had it twice, it felt very real, and we still joked about it, but I kind of understood that this might be something much more serious than something we would joke about. 3 months passed, and my family and I were camping at Mount Rainier when I again collapsed, and the rangers were very nice about it. We explained that I was fine, and it's nothing serious, and that I'd be okay, but I'd just take a little time for me to get back on my feet. And they gave us junior ranger patches, which I love those, so that was a win. At this point, I had had 4 within 1 year, which seemed concerning, and they just escalated from there. After my 4th seizure, my mom made a call to the neurologist to try and get me in for an appointment. We ended up being able to land one, but my mom explained that I wasn't going to be able to sleep the night before my appointment because they wanted me sleep deprived. I said okay, because I didn't mind pulling an all-nighter every once in a while. So that night I was sitting and watching YouTube while I saw something out of the corner of my eye. And I know now that it was definitely a mouse, but I wasn't quite sure at the time, and it was 3 a.m., and it just kind of, like, scurried under my desk, which was terrifying, so I called my dad and told him to check under my desk, and he told me he didn't see anything under there, and that I should just go back to sleep. But I could not get that mouse out of my head, so I went into the next day paranoid about the mouse, and also concerned about what my diagnosis might be. When we went into the appointment, they laid me down on a bed and attached all these monitors to my head with some gel and told me to close my eyes as this light was flashing on and off. And I genuinely started tripping. Like, it felt like that part in Digital Circus when Jax is abstracting and all the colors begin to blend and mesh. It was just the most insane thing ever. Like, I don't know, but it was really cool and really weird. The test was to make sure that I didn't have epilepsy, so they were monitoring my brain activity during the lights, which was supposed to stimulate something in the brain if I did have epilepsy, but yeah. After a couple of minutes, the technician turned off the lights and told me I was good to take a nap. I took the best 20-minute nap of my entire existence. Like, it was wonderful. We had a couple hours in between my appointments, and so my mom took me home, and all I wanted to do was take a bath and get the gunk out of my hair. As I was standing there by my bathtub, I looked down at my hands and kind of realized that this is something so much more serious than what I thought in April. And I didn't ever expect for this to be something that I would have to get tests on and have to go in for neurology appointments and see if I have epilepsy. Like, it just felt so overwhelming. An hour after that, we were back in the hospital and we talked to my neurologist, and he told us the good news. It's not epilepsy, but the bad news is they weren't completely sure what it was. They just told me I had to drink 80 ounces of water a day, get good sleep, and worst of all, I could not have any caffeine, which I felt a little weird about the no caffeine bit, but they thought it was going to help me not have seizures, so I was fine doing it. September passed, and we rolled right into October. When October began, I began to have them at least once a week, and then it all boiled up on one day in the middle of October. I was sitting in class, and I started to feel hot, and I told my boyfriend that I was feeling gross. Then I ended up just kind of collapsing on him, and my friends went and got the teachers again, and that seizure I had lasted an hour and a half. Throughout the rest of the day, I proceeded to have about 20 more small seizures. I would say in total I had about 22, but I was so exhausted and my body was aching, I could hardly stand. From that point on, I continued to have seizures every single day. We went back to the neurologist, and he told us that with these seizures, we told him of the ramping up seizures, and he said that it seemed to be psychogenic non-epileptic seizures, which is a psychological disorder that is rare, but it can go hand in hand with anxiety and depression. I've suffered with depression for years, and I've always been a bit of an anxious person, but I never thought of how much of an anxious person I was. Throughout this process, though, I started to realize how much anxiety I actually did feel out my day. And then being aware of my anxiety and also my seizures scared me, and I think that caused me to have a lot more seizures than I typically had. I began to have 1 or 2 a day for 3 months, and I started staying home more because I was so scared to be somewhere alone and collapsing, and I started taking the public transportation, and it just felt like all of my freedom and independence was being stripped away because of this disorder. I lost all of my motivation to create, and drawing felt like it got thrown completely out the window. Even reading became difficult. Most days, I would leave school hours early and go home and sleep until the next day. My mental health was declining fast, same with my physical health, and we all knew that we had to do something to fix these seizures. So I went and saw my therapist, who told me that I have three options. Extensive therapy, which would entail about 10 hours of therapy per week, taking medication for depression and anxiety, or doing weekly therapy just with her. She told me I could do all 3 or just choose a couple and see where it took me. My immediate choices were the extensive therapy and weekly therapy. I'm okay with medication, but what I would like to be able to feel a bit more in control, like with working on stuff, and not just having the medication, like, I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but it makes sense to me. My dad called a couple different places for the extensive therapy, and they told us that they didn't take her insurance, or it would be too difficult with my school hours to be able to attend. So I was back with my therapist, and she told me that I could start this medication for anxiety called hydroxyzine, which acted almost more like a Benadryl. So I would take it at night, and then it would just kind of calm the whole nervous system for the next day. And I was feeling pretty good about this. I had stopped having seizures for a couple days, which was a huge milestone, but at the beginning of this month, I had another really bad seizure. And I mean at the start of January. I had about 8 in one day, and I was only around my friend and my boyfriend, and they were taking care of me, but it was definitely the most difficult strand of seizures that I've had. I could not stop tensing up. The best way that I could describe how my body feels while I'm seizing is like when you clench your fist for as long and as hard as you can, it starts to hurt. It's like that, but it's my entire body and every joint. After this strand, my dad and I knew that hydroxyzine probably wouldn't be enough, so we went in to get me started on antidepressants. I felt really devastated taking these. I felt like I should be able to control my own emotions. I'm aware of them, so why can't I do anything about it? My therapist explained, though, that it was just a tool to help me move forward, a crutch for my mental health. About 3 weeks passed, and I've been on my antidepressants. I'm happy to announce that I haven't had any seizures for 3 weeks, which just feels amazing, and I'm so grateful for everybody that has helped me throughout this process, and to my doctors, and the patience from you guys of like not getting any content, which like I know there's not a lot of you guys, but I'm just so grateful that everything seemed to be going better and all right, and I've started taking public transportation again and getting back into my hobbies, and obviously making this video was a huge deal. But I'm feeling so much more like myself, and hopefully it's just the up and up from here. And yeah, and that's the end of my crazy past year. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you guys next time. Goodbye.